You already know what time it is. Another Friday, another I'm Not Lying podcast here at Chinochi Sports with your favorite host, Michael. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. So MLB and NBA have been scheduling and they've been doing multiple meetings and they finally settled and have finally started to make the returns for their seasons. A lot of MLB fans don't really care about basketball too much because it's different speeds. MLB is a slower pace. That's why it's called America's pastime, because it's a slower paced game. Takes on an average about 2-3 hours. Basketball games, if it weren't for commercial timeouts and regular timeouts in general, people would be out of the stadium within an hour. So this would be the first time that the NBA playoffs would try to compete with the MLB playoffs. And for a lot of MLB fans who don't watch the NBA, this is something new. 9 times out of 10, they're not having to deal with, baseball taking all the attention away from playoff basketball. That's not really something that happens. Typically, when the NBA playoffs and the finals are starting to ramp up, that's when, that's in the beginning of the MLB season. So, with that being said, here are the NBA bubble teams that MLB fans could root for. If you're a Yankees fan, root for the LA Lakers. They're both franchise most associated with winning in their respective leagues. New York is the first in MLB in total titles when LA is second, but Bill Russell won the majority of Boston, so not a lot of people remember those titles. Both are in win now mode, but their future is in question if they don't win. I mean, look, LeBron, he's only going to be the greatest player in the league for at most 3 to 4 years. So what's your contingency plan? What happens if you don't win any titles with LeBron? And for the Yankees, what happens if you don't win a title with Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and all these guys? And also, they both, despite them being the premier franchises in their leagues, they haven't done a lot of winning recently. I mean, the Yankees haven't won a World Series since 2009. The Lakers' last NBA Finals championship was in 2010. Back in the old guard when the Yankees had Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, CC Sabathia, Alex Rodriguez, and the Lakers had Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum, Kobe Bryant, Derek Fisher. So both of these teams are in the same position. Now for the Los Angeles Dodgers, you're the Houston Rockets. You've had terrific star talent in the past years. With Dodgers, you have Matt Kemp, Clayton Kershaw, Hanley Ramirez, and more recently, Justin Turner, Jock Peterson, Cody Bellinger. In the Rockets, you have Yao Ming, Tracy McGrady, Rafael Austin, Stevie Francis, and more recently, James Harden, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook. And you perform well in the regular season. The Dodgers, 9-19 and 7-1 in the regular season since 2010. And the Rockets are 488 and 316 since 2010. But you also underperform in the postseason. The Dodgers have been to the playoffs 7 times since 2010. You have no World Series titles. Oh, well, the Astros cheated. Okay. That was one World Series. What about the second one? What about all the other times when Clayton Kershaw was this premier pitching talent in the regular season? When he gets to the postseason, he freezes. What about then? With the Rockets, we've had 7 playoff appearances with no NBA title win or even either without an NBA Finals win or an NBA Finals berth. What's up with that? You had Golden State down 3-2. What happened? James Harden has been a top 5 player in this league. And you're trying to put the pieces around him to make it work, and you're just not doing it. So, third, Boston Red Sox fans, you don't have to go that far because Boston Red Sox fans should vote for their hometown Celtics. They're both legendary franchises, and they both have had recent down years, but have moved on from those times. I mean, look at the Red Sox. In 2013, they finished last in the American League East. In 2013, they popped, went first, and went on to win the World Series. And then in 2014 and 2015, they finished last in the American League East, and then went on to win the pennant 3 straight years. And then look at the Celtics. 2013, first round exit. 2014, missed the playoffs entirely. 2015, first round exit. 2016, first round exit. 2017, 2018, conference finals berths. 2019, you had a second round exit. But you've moved on from being just a fringe playoff team, or a team that doesn't do it in the playoffs. And they have young stars mixed with veterans, and they can be set up to win either now or later. You have Mookie Betts, Xavier Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, Andrew Benintendi, Eduardo Rodriguez for the Red Sox. So, and you've already won with those guys. And that's not including Mitch Moreland, Jackie Bradley Jr., JD Martinez, Chris Sale. You've already won with these guys. But you're also primed to win later with these guys as well. And then for the Celtics, you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Daniel Tice, Marcus Smart. And then for the veterans, you have Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, and Enes Kanter. So you can easily win now with the team that you have, but even if you keep this team, you're a threat in the East for the next 5 to 10 years. Number 4, Washington Nationals fans, you need to cheer for the Toronto Raptors. Look, both of y'all were criminally underrated and doubted during your title year. Washington got rid of Bryce Harper and didn't even win the division. And Toronto was second in the Eastern Conference, got rid of Dwayne Casey and DeRozan. Kawhi Leonard, who was their best player, missed out a quarter of the season due to load management. And honestly, Giannis had the Raptors running with their tails in between the legs in the first 2 games of the conference finals. And everybody doubted the Raptors because it took the luckiest shot of all shots in postseason history for the Raptors to even get to the conference finals. What if Kawhi's shot doesn't go in? We're talking about a completely different 2019 NBA playoffs. Now, both of these teams get a lot of production from their bench and role players, with Washington as Drupal Cabrera, Howie Kendrick, Kurt Suzuki, ranked 2nd, 3rd, and 6th on the team respectively in OPS out of all players with 100 or more plate appearances. And for Toronto, you have Norman Powell, Fred VanVleet, etc., all of those guys. Their bench ranks 4th in the NBA in plus minus. And both teams have a lot of promising young talent coming out, and they have to figure out what they're going to do with them. With Washington, you have Juan Soto, Victor Robles, Trey Turner, Wilmer Defoe. For Toronto, you have Terrence Davis, OG Anunoby, Chris Boucher, Pascal Siakam, Norman Powell. Number 5, you have the Los Angeles Angels. And they are the Milwaukee Bucks. They have a supreme talent in the sport. LA have Trout, and the Bucks have Giannis. And both teams are looking for a solid 2nd to 3rd star for their supreme talent. LA, you have Pujols, Shohei Ohtani, and Jonathan Simmons, Cole Calhoun, David Fletcher. Milwaukee, Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, Brook Lopez. But despite all of that, they've underachieved with the star that they have. The Angels have no playoff wins in Trout's entire tenure there. They've only been to the playoffs once. Milwaukee only has 1 conference finals appearance, and their star completely got neutralized, and when that happened, nobody else on the Bucks roster seemed to know what to do. 6, Atlanta Braves fans, why not root for the Memphis Grizzlies? Since I'm an Atlanta Braves fans and a Grizzlies fan, it kind of works in my favor. Look, Nobody expected them to be so good so soon. The 2018 Braves won the NL East pennant, which was completely unexpected. They had just gotten rid of all the old guard. They had lost a whole bunch of players, and everyone thought, you know what I'm saying? They had just finished third in the NL East. And it was like, looks like another mediocre year for them. Then they popped and won the NL East pennant and followed that up with another NL East pennant in 2019, when they had averaged 72 wins from 2014 to 2017. What about the Grizzlies? The Grizzlies were projected to finish last place in the NBA West. The over-under of 27.5 games over an 82-game season is already broken because they have 32 wins over a 65-game season. And this is all despite the fact that they were dealing with injuries throughout the entire year. And this success is due to their young talent and their veteran leadership. I mean, Atlanta probably has one of, if not the best young player in the entire Major League with Ronald Acuna. But they also have Ozzy Albies, Mike Soroka, Dansby Swanson, Max Fried, Austin Riley, Mike Fulton Whites, Jose Camargo. And then for the veterans, they had Josh Donaldson did really well, Charlie Culberson, Dallas Keuchel, Nick Markakis, and of course, you can't forget Freddie Freeman. What about Memphis? Memphis had John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark. Then for the veterans, you have Kyle Anderson, Valanciunas, Jang. And even though I always ragged on these two guys, Solomon Hill and Jay Crowder, you can't ignore the veteran impact that they had on the young guys as well. So, yeah. And they both have steps to make, both of these teams. Atlanta needs to learn how to win in the playoffs. They haven't been to the NLCS since 2001. They've made it to the playoffs, but they've never made it past the division round. For Memphis, they have to learn how to contend in the West. Like, this year they did really well, but they still finished sub 500 against Western Conference opponents. And the Western Conference is not going to get any easier from here on out. Golden State had a down year. They'll be better. New Orleans had a down year. They'll be better. Sacramento, Minnesota, they're getting their pieces together. They'll be better. Phoenix got hot early, so I believe they'll be able to replicate the same thing next year. Portland shouldn't be as disappointing next year as they were this year. I don't believe anybody in the top 7 is really going to drop out or have a severe drop in production. So Memphis has to learn to distinguish itself amongst the top 8 and solidify itself there. It has a lot of great talent, but it has to show that it can make the steps necessary to become a perennial playoff team. Same with Atlanta. Atlanta, that's the thing that a lot of people knock Atlanta for. They always get to the playoffs, but whenever they get to the playoffs, they don't do anything with it, or they're always on that track, on the trajectory, and then towards the end of the season, they tail off. You have to learn Atlanta, how to win in the playoffs, Memphis, how to contend in the West. So, I was thinking, and a few episodes ago, I did my preseason All-Americans for college football. And I thought about something. What if they did that, but for the NFL? And I was like, well, that wouldn't really make any sense because unlike college football, which is a revolving door of players, the NFL is rather stagnant. I mean, look at the starting quarterbacks now. A solid 75% of starting quarterbacks now will be the starting quarterbacks for the next 2 to 3 years. So I was just thinking, so what if not guys, not preseason like all league, but what if I do a topic where guys who are posed for a breakout out of both conferences? I feel like that's a really good way to go about this because a lot of times we see players just pop out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at guys like, Zach Pascal, and what he did in Indianapolis. Nobody thought he would have had that impact. When you look at Tyreek Hill and what he's done for the Chiefs, no one thought he would have had that impact, but he did. Nobody thought Gardner Minshew would be as good as he was. So with that being said, I've created my all NFL breakout offense. And these 4 players who are either had a down 2019 or players will have a huge 2020. These players are either going into their 3rd year or sooner, and all playoff quarterbacks are thrown out, but playoffs for other positions are completely fine. So let's start with the AFC. And my quarterback, it's really a no-brainer here, is Baker Mayfield. And look, I'm a person who believes that Sam Darnold is better than Baker Mayfield, but I have to be realistic here. Baker Mayfield has the better situation. He has the better team. Sam Darnold's only good weapon, Robbie Anderson, he plays in Carolina now. Which one of Darnold's weapons would even get significant playing time on Cleveland? Le'Veon Bell is probably the only player that comes to mind, and I honestly forgot he was on the Jets until midway through the season when I started doing research for this podcast. He had 1,200 scrimmage yards, 4 total touchdowns in 2019. That's good, but not great. And if I learned anything from the NFL, is that good is replacement level. So Bell would be what? The 3rd string running back on Cleveland behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? That's really it. Who else do the Jets have that the Browns could possibly want? No wide receiver from the Jets is cracking the top 3. No tight end from the Jets is cracking the top 2. And the O-line for the Jets is much, much worse than the Browns' O-line. But let's look at Baker. Throughout his entire football career since Baker started at Oklahoma, what have we seen from Baker Mayfield? Coaching matters. When he was with Lincoln Riley, he looked like one of the greatest college football quarterbacks to ever play for Oklahoma, if not to ever play the sport. When he was with Hugh Jackson, he started 5 games, went 1-4, completed 56.5% of his passes, 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 76.5 passer rating. And when he was playing with Freddie Kitchens in 2019, he completed 59% of his passes, 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, 78.8 passer rating, and went 6-10. But what about the 8 games he played with Greg Williams? He went 5-3, completed 68% of his passes, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 106.2 passer rating. If you extrapolate those 8 games that Baker had with Greg Williams, who is a good coach, over a 16-game season, these are the numbers. He would have went 10-6, had 4,500 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions, with a 68% completion percentage and a 106.2 passer rating. Here are the list of players with 10 or more wins, 68% completion, 35 touchdowns, 4,500 yards, and a 105 passer rating in a single season. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, and Matt Ryan. Those are really good quarterbacks. Look, I'm not saying Baker is going to have an all-star year with Kevin Stefanski, but I have a lot of faith in saying that Kevin Stefanski is probably going to have the effect likewise to Greg Williams, then he will have likewise to Freddie Kitchens or Hugh Jackson. Even if he's somewhere in the middle, that's a win for Baker Mayfield. Now for running back, number 1, I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the first-round pick for Kansas City. Look, I already talked about him in a couple of episodes ago, so let's just go ahead and make this quick. LaShawn McCoy probably is not going to coming back, so that's not something you have to worry about. And Edwards-Helaire is going to start in Kansas City, even if LaShawn McCoy did come back. He's a solid 3-down back, and he can run and catch out of the backfield. Patrick Mahomes is a supreme talent, and having a solid running back who can either run the ball so Patrick doesn't have to throw as much, or can be a solid check down option for Patrick Mahomes. It's great for Mahomes' preservation, especially now that he just signed that mega extension. Look, that's why the Carolina Panthers drafted Christian McCaffrey. It was to preserve Cam. Yeah, Leonard Fournette was the better running back, but Christian McCaffrey was the better weapon. He was the better option as far as Cam Newton's preservation. So, running back number 2 goes to Nyheim Hines in Indiana. Now, look, he's the preferred pass catcher out the backfield for the Colts. His 44 receptions was second on the team, only one behind from the lead, and all other running backs on the roster had 26 receptions. And also, look at the new starting quarterback, Phillip Rivers. Where did he come from? Oh, Los Angeles, where they had Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon, which were 2 running backs who could both run and catch the ball effectively. And also look at the NFL. Look at all the running backs who are doing terrific numbers right now. They're all guys who can both run the ball and catch the ball at the backfield. Saquon, C-Mac, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, all the really, really good and top-tier running backs in the league, all can catch out the backfield. And not to mention Nyheim Hines is an excellent punt returner. So if you're looking for guys who you potentially want to, get a sleeper on for fantasy, pick up Nyheim Hines. Thank me later. Now for wide receiver, we have N'Keal Harry out in New England. Look, I know he didn't have a great 2019, but he was injured. And a lot of his lack of success wasn't individual, but residual. One was New England's main problem with the receiving corps. They didn't have any deep threat. They didn't have any speed. That's why they got Antonio Brown. That's why they tried out Josh Gordon, to find that deep threat. N'Keal Harry, everyone knew that's not what he was. He was primarily a guy with really, really good hands and a huge catch radius who can make those contested catches, who can box out the defensive backs and beat them downfield and win those 50-50 balls. And those are the wide receivers that Cam really succeeds with. N'Keal Harry, honestly, is what Kelvin Benjamin should have been. And I believe with Cam Newton and Bill Belichick as the brains, that he will live up to his full potential. At wide receiver number 2, you have Michael Pittman, who is the rookie wide receiver for Indiana. Look at the Colts' leading receivers in all of their categories. The leading receiver had 45 receptions, 670 yards, and 5 total touchdowns. On a really good team, that's a number 2 or number 3 receiver. Look, Pittman could be a solid 1, 2, or 3 to T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal. And like I mentioned earlier, Zach Pascal was also another solid choice for this pick, but I decided to give it to Michael Pittman for this reason alone. Look at Michael Pittman. Look at Michael Pittman and look at what draft evaluators said about him. He's a bigger wide receiver. He's great in the red zone, but he needs to improve his route running. Who does that remind you of? Oh, he's Mike Williams. They're both bigger wide receivers, great red zone threats, terrific body control, and they're terrific at shorter routes, but they struggle to separate from cornerbacks. They don't have blazing top-end speed, and they need to improve their route running. That's what draft analysts said about both of those guys coming out of college. And Phillip Rivers made one of those guys a 1,000-yard receiver last year. That was Mike Williams, despite the fact that Phillip Rivers had a quote-unquote down year. At tight end, we have Foster Moreau for the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, I know he'll have either Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota throwing him the ball. I know the Raiders signed Jason Witten, Nelson Aguilar, Nick O'Leary. I know Darren Waller is a terrific tight end with 90 receptions, 1145 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns last year. But Moreau did pretty well with the targets that he got. He had 21 receptions, 174 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, and had an 84% catch rate. Moreau only played 36% of the offensive snaps. So if he becomes more of a cog in that offense, especially for John Gruden moving forward, I mean, who knows? He could definitely continue to build on what was a pretty successful and significant 2019 campaign. Now, moving on to the NFC, at quarterback, of course, it's going to be Kyler Murray. It's a no-brainer. Look, if I were asked to build a franchise to win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, Kyler Murray's in my top 10 picks. You have Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, Lamar Jackson, Matt Stafford, Kyler, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, and Joe Burrow. That list is in no really strict order, but Kyler Murray's name deserves to be up there. Look, he completed 64% of his passes for 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and an 87 passer rating in 2019. I'm not worried about the fact that he runs a lot or he led the league in sacks, because he really doesn't take any big unnecessary hits. That's what I call the Cam Newton syndrome. Because when we saw Cam, who was the best running quarterback for a while, when we saw Cam do what he was doing, we was like, oh, okay. He was taking all these big hits, getting his body bruised and banged up, and we was like, we don't want that to happen to our quarterback. So everyone feared that for every quarterback who could run coming out of college, they all said, we don't want them to be taking big unnecessary hits, and we're worried that if they get to the league, they'll be taking big unnecessary hits. That's what people said about Kyler. That's what people said about Lamar. That's what people said about Josh Allen. That's what people said about Baker Mayfield. But look at Kyler's tape. He doesn't really take a lot of big hits. He's like Russell Wilson. He's slippery, and when he gets down, he knows how to get down. They're baseball guys. They know how to slide, so they can do that. Even look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson may not slide, but he's not going to take an unnecessary hit when he can easily go out of bounds or just simply get to the ground. And when you look at Arizona, really their biggest offensive weakness as far as weapons go was the fact that they didn't have a wide receiver who could consistently win 50-50 balls down the field or towards the sideline or on the hashes. And they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, which completely eradicates that problem. So if you're going to look at any quarterback in the NFC for a breakout year, look no further than the number one overall pick from last year. Next, we have Derrius Guice out of Washington. He missed all of 2018 due to injury and only played 5 games in 2019 because he was hurt. And one of the biggest knocks on Washington last year was how they mishandled Guice and how he was returning from injury. So, in comes new coach Ron Rivera. What was Ron Rivera really big on before Cam really became who Cam was? Rivera ran a 2 running back system. It was like thunder and lightning. It was Jonathan Stewart was the thunder, D'Angelo Williams was the lightning. And he has Adrian Peterson and Derrius Guice. Adrian Peterson can be the thunder, Derrius Guice can be the lightning. Look, Rivera is smart. He will know how to manage the guys in a way to where not only is he getting the production out of him that he needs in order to win football games, but he'll also give guys enough rest so that he doesn't feel unnecessary strain on his body. And look, even if it comes down to it, Rivera can bring in Bryce Love or Peyton Barber for extra touches if need be. So Derrius Guice is going to have a better 2020 campaign than he had 2019, 2018. People are going to remember why he was so highly touted coming out of LSU and why people was looking at him even while Leonard Fournette was on the team a couple of years earlier. So look out for Derrius Guice out of Washington. Next, we have Darrell Henderson out of Los Angeles. This could have also gone to Cam Akers, but it really goes to whoever the Rams give a healthy split of Todd Gurley's touches to after they split it with Malcolm Brown, who's already on the roster. I decided to go with Henderson because he's more explosive and he's the better pass catcher. And look, as much as this is on Darrell Henderson, this really falls on the shoulders of Sean McVay in that offense. And Sean McVay is the offensive genius that we gave him credit for when he took that team to the Super Bowl. then he has to figure out a way to get running back production. We gave him a pass because we was like, okay, Todd Gurley was hurt, and you paid him, so you felt forced to play him. But Todd Gurley is gone now. So there should be no reason as to why you can't get production out of the running back spot. I'm not saying that I expect Todd Gurley production from any of these running backs. I'm just saying don't have your running back be as much of, I don't want to say a cancer, but as much of a dark spot on that offense as it was last year. Because we all saw when they tried to force it to Todd Gurley and he wasn't healthy, the offense just looked terrible. So, there you go. On wide receiver, you have Jalen Reagor for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, everyone wants to tell me Eagles needed a wide receiver. Why didn't they get Justin Jefferson? Because the Eagles didn't need just any wide receiver. They needed a deep threat, and that's exactly what Jalen Reagor is. He has top-end speed. He's a great route runner. He has good rack ability. He's surprisingly good at contested catches, and he has a little issue with drops, but once he's on and he's concentrated, he's unstoppable. Reagor finished second in the FBS last year in yards per punt return with over 20 yards per punt return. Over 20 yards per punt. With the average punt in the NFL, that means the majority of your drives will start either near midfield or past midfield. And with shorter fields mean a lot to quarterbacks. Look at Jameis Winston. He went 30 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in his opponent half of the field compared to 3 touchdowns and 24 interceptions on his own half of the field. And Reagor would be a great receiver to play opposite Alshon Jeffrey, who's a more technical route runner, good hands type of wide receiver, whereas Jalen Reagor is the deep threat, which he will probably be double covered because of how explosive he is. At the other wide receiver spot, you have the aforementioned Justin Jefferson. Look, Stephon Diggs, gone. He had 63 catches for 1130 and 6 TDs. Somebody has to replace that production. Oh, Dalvin Cook may not come back from Minnesota. He had 53 receptions for 519. Somebody has to replace that production. Justin Jefferson is a solid deep threat, a good route runner, and from what LSU coaches have said about him, he's a great practice player. He'll be a solid option opposite Thielen, and honestly, I feel like Kirk Cousins would probably favor Justin Jefferson. He probably would, just because of the skill set that he has. And look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is just an improved version of Kirk Cousins. That's not a diss to Joe Burrow at all. It's just, look, that is what it is. Not truly gifted with arm strength, but they have pretty solid accuracy, pretty solid mobility. You know? You don't know how good they are leading a team of players who aren't good, but when they have players who are good around them, they can really thrive and flourish. So, put Justin Jefferson with Kirk Cousins. I truly believe it would be a beneficial partnership for both sides. And then finally, at tight end for the NFC, you have to throw in Hayden Hurst out of Atlanta. And look, Hurst was probably the lone. He was the lone man out of Baltimore. You know, he's a great receiving tight end, but he only had 30 receptions for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns in Baltimore last year. And when you look at Hayden Hurst going to Atlanta, it's primarily, look who left. Devontae Freeman, he's a free agent. 59 receptions, 410 yards, 4 touchdowns. Gone. Mohamed Sanu, when he was with Atlanta, 33 receptions, 313 yards, 1 touchdown. He's a Patriot now. Austin Hooper, who was the starting tight end for Atlanta, 75 receptions, 787 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's a Cleveland Brown. Justin Hardy, 19 receptions for 195 yards. He's gone. The other tight end, Luke Stalker, 8 receptions for 53 yards. He's gone. Who's going to replace all the receiving production? Laquan Treadwell, who couldn't even break into the receiving corps of Minnesota. Todd Gurley, who got ran out of L.A. Look, Hurts has a great chance to solidify himself as a Pro Bowl level tight end. He has amazing receiving attributes, and he's also a really, really good blocker. So you will play him on both first, second, and third down, whether you want to block, whether you want him to block for a run, block for a pass, or to go out for a pass. I'll be surprised if he's not the starting tight end in Atlanta, simply that he's the best option that they have. And I'd be surprised if Hayden Hurst doesn't have a spectacular year in Atlanta. Not just because of everyone who's missing, but because he won't be going to a scrub. He'll be going to Matt Ryan, who I feel is a top 10 quarterback in this league. So, there you go. All right, now I'm going to bring back something that I started a couple of weeks ago. It's called My Take on Your Take, where essentially I look at, all I do is watch sports shows really all day. So I take something that I see on that, I take a take, and I just give my own spin on it. So with that being said, here we go. So yesterday, ESPN FC, for the extra time segment where they fans send in questions, had a question, and the question was, Kevin De Bruyne, the Manchester City midfielder, or Bruno Fernandes, the new midfielder that Manchester United got. Now, they said Kevin De Bruyne without a doubt. In the comments, however, the comments were like, "Oh, this is such a disrespectful question. I can't believe they asked that. Of course, it's KDB. Blah 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 blah." And I'm like, whoa. Of course, what I'm saying, we're asking about skill. Kevin De Bruyne is leagues better than Bruno Fernandes. Anybody who's playing FIFA could probably be like, yeah, I feel like Kevin De Bruyne is better than Bruno Fernandes, even if FIFA is the only experience with soccer that they've ever had. But what if the question wasn't who's better, but who's more important to their team? Now that's a much more interesting question. I mean, look at what's happened since February, since Bruno Fernandes joined Manchester United. Kevin De Bruyne has had 9 starts with 7 wins, no draws, and 2 losses. He scored 6 goals and 4 assists. Not bad. Look at Bruno Fernandes in his 14 starts since February. 12 wins, 2 draws, no losses, 8 goals, and 7 assists. And just for reference, Manchester United in their 13 games before Bruno Fernandes got there, 7 wins, 1 draw, and 5 losses. And that includes going 3 wins and 4 losses in the Premier League. But just yesterday, Manchester United became the first Premier League team ever to win 4 straight Premier League games by 3 or more goals. Ever. So, of course, if the question is who's better, Kevin De Bruyne or Bruno Fernandes, the question is obviously Kevin De Bruyne. But the question is who's more important to their team. I gotta say it's Bruno. Look at the complete turnaround that Bruno Fernandes has had on Manchester United. He even has Pogba scoring goals again. So it's not crazy to think that, Bruno Fernandes is more important to Manchester United than Kevin De Bruyne is to Manchester City. I mean, Manchester United now, they're 1 point away out of a Champions League spot. And if Manchester City ends up getting banned from Champions League, he has them already in a Champions League spot when before he got there, Manchester United was fighting just to stay within the top 8 or the top half of the league. Now, here's a second iteration of this. So, a couple of weeks ago, ESPN's Dan Orlovsky released his top 5 teams who would be able to overcome losing their starting quarterback. He had the Browns at 5, the Colts at 4, the Saints at 3, the Bears at 2, and the Cowboys at 1. Now, I'm not going to lie. This is an okay list. 3 out of his 5 teams are in my top 5 specifically. But let me just give you my top 5. So let's say there's a stomach bug that takes out all starting QBs for week 17 must-win game. Here are the teams who I think is best set up to win that game from 5-1. At 5, you have Miami. Now, this is regardless of whether it's Tua or Fitzpatrick who's the backup. Look, Fitzpatrick in the last 9 games of 2019 completed 63% of his passes, 2,600 yards, 5 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, had a 91 passer rating, and ran for 3 touchdowns, and he had to carry the rushing load for Miami. And he also beat Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, and Jacoby Brissett. Tua, he's no worse than the second best quarterback in the 2020 draft with an incredibly high ceiling. And let's be honest, he has low to moderate expectations for this year. So just tell Tua, go in there and play, and we'll see what happens. We saw what he did at Alabama. So at 4, we have the 49ers. Have we forgotten already who Nick Mullins is? For those of you who forgot or honestly don't know, in 2018, Jimmy G got hurt. But he started 3 games and went 1-2. In comes CJ Beathard. He starts 5 games and loses all 5 of his starts. Throw in Nick Mullins. In his 8 starts in 2018, he completed 64% of his passes, 13 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, and had a 91 passer rating, and went 3-5. And that included wins against Seattle and a really, really tough Denver team. Look, people were arguing and questioning whether or not Mullins should be able to contest for the starting role with Jimmy G. And Jimmy G had just got that insane contract. And people was like, whoa, wait. In 2018... Nick Mullins completed more of his pass. He completed a better percentage of his passes, had a better passer rating, had a better QPR, got sacked less, had more yards per game than Jimmy G. So he should be able to compete for the starter job. Granted, I was not one of those people. I believe that Nick Mullins is just a really, 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 really good backup. But let's not forget that's what Nick Mullins was able to do. He was able to make people question Jimmy G, who just took the 49ers to the Super Bowl and everybody knew was good. He made people question, maybe give Nick Mullins a shot to be the starter instead of giving him a shot to be second string. Like I said, Nick Mullins is a backup for now, but as far as backups go in the NFL, he's a damn good one. For 3, you have the Atlanta Falcons. This is solely based off what I saw last year from Matt Schaub. Look, Matt Schaub, yes, he's still in the league, back with the team that originally drafted him. In his lone start against Seattle, in a game that he lost eventually, he went 39 for 52, 460 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception with a 100 passer rating. Overall, Schaub completed 75% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 109 passer rating in 2019. And look, Matt Schaub is known as a gunslinger quarterback. And if you look at Atlanta, they have nothing but wide receiver talent. Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. They just got Hayden Hurst. We'll see what Laquan Treadwell can do. If Todd Gurley is even 90% of what he was during his prime with the Rams, then he will be a great pass catcher out the backfield. So Matt Schaub would have weapons. So Week 17 must win against the Panthers or the Bucks or the Saints, and you have to throw in Matt Schaub. I'm not completely too worried about how he will perform. With number 2, you have the Dallas Cowboys. Now, look, I know Andy Dalton didn't have his best year in 2019. He completed less than 60% of his passes, 16 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, a 78 passer rating, and went 2-11 in 13 starts. And since 2016, he's completed 61.5% of his passes with 80 touchdowns to 45 picks with an 86 passer rating and has gone 20, 35, and 1. But despite all of that, Andy Dalton's career record is still 70, 61, and 2. And a lot of Andy Dalton's success came when he had a talented team around him, so he didn't have to do it all by himself. And that's exactly what he has in Dallas. The problem with Andy Dalton wasn't the fact that he couldn't get the ball off. It was the fact that he just didn't have the team around him. When Dallas has solid weapons, a solid O-line, great running backs, the only question for Dallas is whether or not the new coach, Mike McCarthy, would be able to put it all together for Dalton to succeed. And at number 1, you have the New Orleans Saints. And I have them at number 1 for 2 reasons. For number 1, unlike the Cowboys, the Saints have both the talent and the coaching to make it work with their potential backups. And number 2, they probably have the best third-string quarterback in the NFL, whoever that third-string quarterback is. Like, you either go with Jameis Winston, who completed 61% of his passes for 5,100 yards, 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, 84 passer rating last year, and you put him with better coaching, an upgrade from Bruce Arians to Sean Payton. I don't care about his 30 interceptions because of his kicker simply made 3 kicks. Tampa Bay is a wild card team, and we have a very different NFL offseason. But that didn't happen, and Jameis Winston only has 1 winning season in 5 years. But he's always had substandard coaching, so I mean. And then you have Taysom Hill, which despite all of his potential as a quarterback, has a career passer rating in the regular season and postseason of 60. And is more effective as a running back and a wide receiver, but can be a quarterback if need be. So they have 2 options, depending on what they want to do and who they feel more comfortable in. So that's why I have the Saints at number 1. Now, of course, there's going to be some people who are mad about my omissions. What about Nick Foles and the Bears? You mean the same Nick Foles that lost his starting job to a 6th-round pick who won half of his games, and then Nick Foles subsequently got traded for a 4th-round pick when Jacksonville has been digging and just searching for a franchise quarterback, and they pay that money for him, and they decide, nah, Nick Foles, you can go. We're going to stick with our 6th-round pick. Jacoby Brissett, he averaged less than 200 yards per game and less than 7 yards per attempt. Every QB to ever do that, except for Josh Allen, Tyrod Taylor, and Mitch Trubisky in the last 5 years, are backups now. And Mitch Trubisky, he's about to lose his job. Josh Allen, we already know his limitations as a passer. And Tyrod Taylor, he's purely a game manager. That's really all you throw him in for. He's not going to throw you to win games. He's just going to throw you to make sure that you can do other things to win the game. What about Case Keenum for the Browns? Case Keenum lost his starting job to Dwayne Haskins. And we all saw Dwayne Haskins. He's not looking like the best quarterback right now. He's the worst quarterback in his division. I don't want to say he's the worst quarterback in the conference, of course, with Mitch Trubisky being the starter for the Bears, but I mean, there's not much worse than Dwayne Haskins as far as starting quarterbacks in the NFC. So, there you go. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. like and subscribe, and comment anything that you want to hear on future episodes. My name is Michael. Thank you for listening again, and I will catch you guys on Wednesday. Peace.